Hello, let's have a look at setting up trading bots on Bitsgap. So it's really easy, pretty much intuitive, and then you just sit back and watch your accounts grow. These bots here are all working on different exchanges, and they've all been working for a variety of different times. This one's been almost 4 days old, this one just over a day old, and you can see that all of them are in profit significantly. Some of them a lot more than others, and depending on the pairs that you've decided to allow the bots to trade. So what we see here is the investment change. So that's the amount of my portfolio, that's how much it's gone up, that is with the volatility of the asset. But the important part is this bit, which is the bot profit. So while the investment change is good, the bot has accumulated 9% more of my entire portfolio's worth. So in this instance it would have been 15 Ethereum on top of what I had this time yesterday. So again, this is just over a day old, so this time yesterday I was 15 Ethereum less, so done very, very well. You can hover over here, it'll tell you the actual USDT or dollar amounts. So it does matter which trading pair you use, and the bot likes volatility, but that's not always the case. So I've been running a variety of different experiments with these, and I chose this pairing on purpose because the volatility is low, and this is something we'll focus on this video as well, because I'm assuming a lot of people who want to try this won't want to try it with an enormous amount of money. They might be skeptical, and I don't blame you. And there are sort of pros to using more money. Clearly, because you make more money back, but it allows the bot more freedom to make more trades. If you are using $1,000 or less, you'll want to choose a pairing which has a smaller range, which is why I chose Harmony 1 to BTC. So the way that this works, and this one here, what we're looking at here is the bot and what it's actually doing. So we'll look at it on a larger time frame. So this bot is working with easy to ETH. So this was the trading range I wanted it to stay within. I wanted it to buy no lower than this level here, because like I say, I didn't think the chart would go any further down than that. And I wanted it to be able to trade all the way up and sell all the way up into this range. I also have this ticked here, which means that if the range started to go parabolic and even higher than that, then the grid would also follow it up, so that the bot would automatically start to understand that the game has changed and the price range is different, and it would move the grid appropriately to cope with that. Now what you see here, all these little things are here, are basically all the trades that have been created. The greens being the buys and the reds being the sells. And overall in the last 24 hours it's made 1,385 trades, which is an enormous amount of trades. Absolutely ridiculous amount of trades, something that couldn't possibly be done by a human. Which is why you have such good returns on it, basically. And again, it definitely does work. It really is worth it. But what I would say though is that because there's such an enormous amount of trades, each one of those trades has an associated fee with it, because every single trade on any platform has an associated fee. So what I would do, and what I have done, is I created myself a new Binance account just for the bot. Now there's a link that you can use below for Binance and some other trading platforms, but for Binance specifically you get 20% of your fees back. So every single one of these trades here, each 1,385 trades, I've basically been reimbursed 20% of that money back by using a separate Binance account by using the link below. So that's saved me some money on top. But with or without that, I'd still be in profit significantly, regardless of those tiny little fees. But again, you know, every little helps, and it's nice to get 20% back on each one of those trades, which is what I have done as well. Right, so what we're going to look at now is how to actually set an account up. But in comparison, what I will show you first of all is each one of these grids, these little lines going sideways, represents a buy or a sell. It buys all the way up, all the way down, with every last little piece of volatility. As you can see, that there's lots of greens and lots of reds, which represent all the buys and sells that have taken place within that volatile range. So if you have, I'd say, if you want to use this bot with over $5,000, you'd be able to use a really large grid and make the most of every little move. But if you wanted to use, let's say, $1,000 or less, you wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't be able to use 180 grids, because each single grid represents a buy or a sell. And so what you'd want to do is you want to trade something similar to Harmony 1, which is why I chose this. And again, looking at the profit, this is 2 days, 19 hours. It's accumulated 18% of my entire portfolio back, and the investment change is this amount. So the investment change is not as great because the asset itself hasn't gone up at the same rate as these two. But the important thing is I've accumulated twice the amount because of this trading range. Now, as you can see here on this trading pair, the grids are spaced out quite a lot more than the others. You can clearly see the grids on this because the trading range with these satoshis is a lot less. This coin trades all the way down at the moment to as low as, recently has been as low as 27, to roughly, I suppose, as high as 40, which means that you don't need that many grids. And remember, each one of these grids represents a buy and a sell zone. So using a grid like this with less than $1,000 is probably one of your best bets. This way you don't need to worry about missing out on volatility, because the trading range is being played. This is a 4-hour chart, but if we go to, let's just go to a 5-minute chart and we'll see how many buys and sells have taken place. It's still happening all the time, but the grid spacing, because it's only in satoshis and the satoshis are so low, it doesn't really matter about how volatile it is. This has been a buy, this is a sell. That's a buy, that's profit. Buy, profit, buy, profit, buy, profit, buy, profit. As you can see, each one of these is basically buying and selling in profit. So you don't need to have a giant range when you're playing with some of these. Now, what I would say though is that it is tempting to even go to as low as something like Dogecoin. And on this, because this is my demo account, it would appear that Dogecoin has been the most profitable of all. But you have to take into consideration the volume, and it does have low volume, and this demo account didn't really understand that, whereas this trades with and the order books have roughly been going at about 50 bitcoins on a 24-hour trading session, which is still close to $1 million in a 24-hour period, just trading this little range. So this one this one did work better in real life scenario. So let's set up a trading bot then, shall we? Brand new, and I'll show you how to go about doing it. So this is my live account, so $1,000, well it was $1,000 yesterday, it's up now by $1,101 today. I've closed my trading bot down and I'm going to create a new one. So what I was saying before about small investments like this, so this is, it's reasonably small, $1,000, it's not too big, it's going to have a problem if you wanted to have an enormous grid shape. Remember what I said, that every single grid represents a buy and a sell. So they will want to have available funds for placing these buys and sells. So in this instance, to set up BTC to USDT, to have 180 grids, which is what this amounts to, 180 grids altogether, at the spacing of 0.36 between it, so a possible buy and a possible sell within this grid spacing, I would need to have $3,584 available. Now I don't have that, I've only got 1,000 or just over, so I could press adjust grid quantity. So what we'll see here, when I press this, it will change these settings to a more appropriate grid spacing for the investment size I've got in my account. So we press this, and now what we've got 51 grids available representing buys and sells at a spacing of 1.28%. So it means that there'll be less buys and less sells depending on the volatility. If this was a highly volatile asset, that would be perfectly fine. If this was like Uni token, for instance, that would be perfectly fine because it moves up and down dramatically within those kind of ranges. But for Bitcoin, it's probably not the greatest. I could do other things, so I could change the grid areas, so I could lower that down. Do I think Bitcoin's going to rally above $18,000 or $19,000 anytime soon? No. And I could say I don't think it's going to go any further down than 14. So now the grid spacing is changed, and it will be making buys and sells within a 0.61% area. Now there's also other things I could do. If I thought that this was going to go parabolic, I wouldn't want the grid to end here. I could press this button here, which would be the trailing up, which meant that the grid would move up with it. So prices like this might not be seen again. Prices up here might be the future, which means that this button here would allow the grids to be automatically created as the price increases, basically meaning I don't miss out on any buys and sells. The grid would move up with it. This grid wouldn't look like this if we rallied above 20,000. The grid would look more like this, but keeping the grid spacing would all be there as well. So that's how I would set it up for Bitcoin to USDT. However, this isn't necessarily the best pairing, and there's a few ways you can maximize on the bot's profit. You could look at down here, we could see the previous month back-tested results for a USDT pair. The last month for AXS to USDT has brought in 100% returns. So we can have a look at that. It doesn't mean that it'll happen again, but this is what it means when there's a highly volatile asset. This bot, the bots enjoy the volatility. It doesn't matter if it's going up or down, they enjoy that volatility. This has been a highly volatile asset, and which is why it's brought in so much. There would have been a phenomenal amount of trades taking place within all of this trading range, up and down, and it's basically brought in that amount. Now, if you see the difference here, this is almost a ridiculous trading range here. You've got 180 grids. It's basically just over 1% away from each other, starting at this price here, 12 cents, all the way up to almost $1. That's a massive trading range, and as a result of that, it wants me to have 14,000, almost 15,000 USDT available to trade that range. That's not going to be feasible for me with this little amount. So I could choose a range. I could choose a token which has a smaller range that could be just as volatile, or I could choose a trading pair which I believe is going to actually make some decent moves, at some point soon. This, you could argue, has already been played out, so I can look at something else instead. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to find something that would be more appropriate for somebody like me with this small amount of money. So here I've chosen a different pairing, which is Anchor to BTC. Now the reason I've chosen this one is because the trading range is relatively small, as you can see, but the possibility of a larger trading range is definitely on the cards. There is a very strong chance that, in my opinion, that this BTC pairing will go up. And even if it didn't, the trading range is nice and small for me to try and capitalize within this range. Now the range, it just starts, the lowest one down here is at 48 sats, the highest is all the way up here at 60 sats, 62 sats. So there's not much need to have a really large trading range, but I could certainly afford to have all of these grids in place in case there was some decent volatility. Remember, the trailing up is on in the event that this was to move all the way out of this grid, and I could profit all the way up to the top. So there's something that you want to bear in mind. Now, bear in mind, first of all, I need to convert some Bitcoin. All my assets are in Tether. But first of all, before I do that, something else you want to look at would be that you want to check the volume, because there's no point in trading anything with a very low volume. If the order books are full but no one's trading it, there's not really much point in setting this up. I chose Anchor as well because the trading volume is actually relatively high. That's 76, almost 77 Bitcoins being traded in a 24-hour basis on this pair on its own, which is quite a lot for somebody that's looking to use only $1,000 to trade with. So, which would basically, what that means is that each one of these ticks is likely to have your orders filled, very likely to have your orders filled, so you can still profit on each one of these ticks up and down. Remember when we looked at the Harmony 1 trading bot that I'd set up, that had a lower 24-hour trading volume than Anchor, and more or less the same kind of range, a very small range. So I only need 16 grids on this trading bot to capitalize on every single move here, and again the volume is high enough for all my orders to be filled on each tick up and each tick down. So at this stage we're ready to start the bot. So the grids are in place, the buy orders will be from this level here, the sell orders will be up here. If I wanted to, if I thought that the Satoshis would be drained any further, I could bring this down a little bit more. I'd still have plenty of money to fulfill each one of these. I'd just increase the grid quantity, and again 19 grids is very, very small. You will not need to worry about affording that with even less than $500 or even less than that. Remember, each grid represents a buy and a sell zone. The grid spacing is, in this instance, 1.89%. The reason for that is because each tick down essentially would be that amount, because we're talking Satoshis here, we're not talking about Tether or dollars, we're talking Satoshis. So a single tick down is almost a 2% tick down, a tick up, again almost a 2% tick up. So each time the bot makes a transaction, it would be, you know, if it were to tick up, that would be a 2%, thereabouts a 2% profit, buying down here, selling up here, buying, selling, buying, selling, buying, selling, buying, selling. So all I'd need to do now that the grids are in place is say start bot. Click start the bot and it'll ask me, the bot, it's necessary to buy this amount of anchor. Are you going to do this at the market price? Now this is something that you might want to consider. Is the market price at its lowest point for the moment? I would imagine that the market price would be between these two sats, but if you wanted to go ahead and do this manually beforehand you could, or you could just allow it to be bought at the market price. We're going to go ahead with the market price because again I've done this every single time and I've always ended up being in profit. The bot has always made profit for me. So we'll just press yes buy. The bot is going to go ahead and make those orders. The orders have now been filled and now the bot has already started trading. We've got one buy already and one sell. So at this point now we've had the bot going for basically a few seconds. We're already in profit, or should I say the bot has already made a 0.1% profit. This amount of Bitcoin has been made as a result of the bot, and my investment change has gone up by this amount. That would be an accumulation of between Anchor and BTC. So the portfolio size has gone up, so I've made that much profit already, plus I've made 0.1% extra on top in the form of BTC from trading this pair. Hopefully that has made sense to you, and like I say, for smaller investments, smaller portfolio sizes, I probably would suggest doing Bitcoin pairs on, I suppose, things like Anchor and Harmony One that trade within a smaller range, so you can afford to have a maximum amount of grids in a small amount of places. Because remember, the grids are important, but the price range, doesn't necessarily need to be the thing that you focus on. You can have a smaller grid, and as long as you're making transactions constantly, which is likely to happen, because what are we on here? We're on an hourly chart, but let's go to a 5-minute chart. We'll see how many ticks there's been. It's constantly ticking within this range, which means that there is an opportunity to basically make buys and sells within this range constantly. So the grid, even though it's small, has the capacity to make lots and lots of transactions. And if each of those transactions is essentially 2%, then it can accumulate quite a lot in a short space of time with a smaller grid. So for those who are using small amounts of money, like $1,000 or less, or probably even say $500 or less, this might be one of the options you might want to consider, rather than choosing an asset with extreme volatility, which obviously will be profitable to do that, because the bot will be able to make lots of transactions, but you'd have to have a larger grid, and in order to do that you'd need a larger amount in your portfolio size. So hopefully that's been useful to you. I would certainly suggest you set this up. Again, it's all free to set up. You get 14 days of a pro account that you can use completely free, and if you wanted to go ahead thereafter, then it would ask you to pay, but otherwise you could go down to a basic package, which again is still free, but there are a range of packages all the way through that are free and that have a different pricing involved. And again, if you set up a new Binance account, which would give you 20% of your trading fee back, that's also more profit for you as well. So all the links are in the description below, and if you need to ask me any further questions, just join my Telegram chat. There's a link for that in the description below, and you can contact me directly. Anyway, thank you for watching, and have a nice day. Take it easy.